While the world watched Prince Charles and Princess Diana's marriage unfold on the global stage, watched as their wedding became the fairy tale that captured the imagination of billions of people across the world, watched as their relationship deteriorated and crumbled under the weight of impossible expectations and infidelity and personal incompatibility, Queen Camilla was quietly building an entirely different life in the shadows. She invested nearly £500,000 into a sprawling Wiltshire estate, a decision that would prove to be one of her most personal and significant acts of self-determination. What exactly was she protecting at Ray Mill House? What was she running from, and what was she running towards? And why, decades later, at the height of her power and position as queen consort, did she just recently hand it over to her family? The answers will shock you. The story of Ray Mill House begins not with grandeur or royal fanfare, but with heartbreak and the profound need for refuge. In 1994, when Camilla Parker Bowles walked away from her marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, she faced a pivotal moment in her life that would define everything that came after. After decades of marriage, after years of compromise and social positioning and attempting to maintain respectability while the world knew the truth of her complicated personal life, she stood at a crossroads unlike anything she had previously experienced. The woman who would one day become queen was simply a woman seeking solace, seeking a space where she could rebuild herself away from the prying eyes of society and the gossip columns that followed her every move with the intensity of a personal vendetta. This wasn't about royal life or privilege as we know it today. This was about survival, about finding solid ground after the earthquake of divorce, about discovering who she was when she was stripped of the identity of being someone's wife, when the role that had defined her existence for so many years was suddenly taken away. By 1996, after taking time to process the dissolution of her marriage and the end of the life she had known, Camilla had made her decision. She purchased Ray Mill House for $850,000, a substantial sum at the time that represented not just a financial investment, but an emotional one as well. For a divorced woman of her age and background, this was a statement of independence and self-determination. She was claiming ownership not just of property, but of her own future. The property sits tucked away in the rolling countryside of Lecoq, a village in Wiltshire that epitomizes English rural charm in ways that seem almost impossibly picturesque. It's the kind of place where time moves differently, where the modern world feels distant and irrelevant, where one can lose oneself in the rhythms of seasons and the cycles of nature. The house itself is a beautiful 19th century structure surrounded by 12 acres of meticulously tended gardens that would eventually become Camilla's greatest passion and her greatest solace. From the moment she acquired the property, Ray Mill House became far more than just a building. It became her sanctuary, her refuge, a place entirely her own where she could exist without justification or apology. The irony that runs through this entire narrative is absolutely delicious and historically profound. While Prince Charles remained married to the Princess of Wales, while he carried on a secret relationship with the woman who had become the most despised person in British society, that same woman was quietly building a new life in the English countryside. She wasn't hiding, not really, although the world certainly thought she was. She was simply existing in a space where she could be herself without the weight of being the other woman, without the complications that her mere existence caused to the entire royal household and institution. Ray Mill House became the place where Camilla could live authentically, away from judgment and away from the glare of international media attention that seemed to follow her relentlessly during those turbulent years. While photographers camped outside royal residences and gossip columnists wrote scathing pieces about her character and her morality and her fitness as a companion to the prince, she was in Wiltshire in her gardens, learning who she was outside of scandal and scandal's shadow. Between 1996 and 2003, Camilla lived at Ray Mill House full-time. These were transformative years for her, years that would shape the woman she would eventually become. During this 7-year period, she was not yet queen, not yet even the official partner of the heir to the throne. She was simply a divorced woman of a certain age, building a life on her own terms, doing things her own way, answering to no one but herself. She was learning that life could be lived on different terms entirely. Ray Mill House became the place where she could reinvent herself, not into someone new, but into someone fully, authentically herself. She transformed the property into an extension of her own being. Every corner of Ray Mill House reflected her taste, her personality, her values, and her vision for what a life could be when lived without apology. The main residence features 6 bedrooms spread across multiple floors, each one decorated with Camilla's distinctive style and eye for detail. The interiors reflect traditional English country house aesthetics, mixed with personal touches that make the space unmistakably hers, unmistakably reflective of a woman who knows what she likes and isn't afraid to express it through her surroundings. The master bedroom features wooden paneled walls that have been polished to a soft glow and large sash windows that drench the room in natural light, allowing views across the expansive gardens at every hour of the day. When morning comes, the light floods in horizontally across the grass and trees with golden intensity. When evening arrives, it sets fire to the sky and illuminates the entire room with warm, honeyed tones. The dining room boasts cream and white Baroque print wallpaper with matching cream carpets, creating an atmosphere of understated elegance and refined taste. A wooden dining table sits at the center, with matching side units and furniture that speaks to someone with refined taste and deep appreciation for classical design. Every piece has been chosen carefully. Nothing is left to chance or accident. The sitting room is perhaps the heart of the home, the space where the life of the house truly unfolds. It features high ceilings with a carved alcove that leads into an enormous bay window with floor-to-ceiling panes of glass. This room is positioned to capture the most stunning views across the garden, and on clear days, the outlook seems to stretch endlessly across the Wiltshire countryside, as if the property extends beyond its boundaries into the landscape itself. Camilla furnished this space with 2 floral armchairs and matching sofa, creating an atmosphere of comfort and warmth. Various wooden tables are scattered throughout the room, each one serving a purpose, each one contributing to the overall ambience. A large chandelier adds a regal touch that hints at her future position without overwhelming the space with her pretension or excessive grandeur. This is not a room designed to impress. This is a room designed to comfort, to invite relaxation, to allow someone to sit and watch the light change across the gardens as the day progresses from morning to evening. There's a snug room as well, perhaps the coziest space in the entire house, a room that seems designed specifically for those moments when one wants nothing more than to withdraw from the world entirely. Wooden paneling lines the walls, creating an intimate atmosphere that wraps around you like a warm embrace. A large fireplace dominates one wall, and above it hangs an enormous painting that draws the eye immediately. Shelves in one corner display various ornaments accumulated over years of living, each one telling a story, each one representing a moment in time or a memory worth keeping. A wooden rocking chair sits to one side, the kind of furniture that invites you to sit down, relax, and forget about the outside world entirely. This was Camilla's space for those quiet evenings when she wanted nothing more than the comfort of home and the sound of fire crackling in the hearth. Beyond the interiors, the property features amenities that speak to comfort and an appreciation for the finer things in life. An outdoor swimming pool provides a place for exercise and relaxation during the warmer months. Stables on the property accommodate horses, reflecting Camilla's love of riding, an equestrian pursuit that has been part of her life since childhood, since those early days when she first learned the bond between horse and rider. An upstairs terrace with black railing overlooks the grounds, providing a vantage point from which to survey the 12 acres of gardens that surround the house. This terrace has become iconic in recent years, appearing in photographs released on royal occasions and birthdays, showing a woman at peace with herself and her surroundings. The gardens at Ray Mill House are perhaps the most important feature of the entire property, the true heart and soul of what makes this place special and deeply personal. They are not manicured to perfection or maintained by a team of professional gardeners solely for show. Instead, they reflect Camilla's personal vision and constant engagement, her hands-on involvement in every aspect of their creation and maintenance. Every area of the garden is part and parcel of a home where lives are lived and shared, rather than a horticultural showpiece existing primarily for the admiring gaze of others. Camilla has personally cultivated these gardens over decades, planting and replanting, experimenting with different species, creating spaces that reflect her evolving tastes and interests. She gets dirt under her fingernails. She knows which plants need more water and which need more sun. She understands the satisfaction that comes from creating beauty through one's own effort. In an interview with Country Life magazine, Camilla revealed that she has had her painted tiger in every garden that she has ever owned. This whimsical detail is perhaps the most telling one about her character and her approach to this property. The tiger appears in the Ray Mill House gardens as it has in all her previous homes, a personal talisman, a statement of continuity and identity. It speaks to someone who takes herself lightly enough to surround herself with objects that bring joy rather than impress others. The gardens feature areas for vegetable cultivation, and in 2025, Camilla spoke candidly about her gardening at the Sandringham Flower Show, describing it as the best therapy in the world. She proudly discussed her vegetables and lamented the heat wave that had challenged her carefully cultivated flower beds. She spoke of never having done so much watering in her life, of the difficulty of maintaining plants during periods of drought and extreme heat. The historical context surrounding Ray Mill House makes the property even more fascinating and significant in the arc of Camilla's life story. While she was establishing herself at Ray Mill during the late 1990s and early 2000s, the royal family and the nation were processing the fallout from the Diana tragedy. The princess's death in 1997 sent shockwaves through British society and around the world that reverberated for years. Prince Charles was in a state of profound grief and public condemnation. The relationship between Charles and Camilla remained relatively hidden from public view. though everyone in positions of power and privilege knew the truth of what had been happening for decades. Ray Mill House became even more important as a place where Camilla could exist outside of the narrative that was consuming the nation. She could walk in her gardens and imagine a future where she was not the villain in this ongoing tragedy. She could work with soil and plants and imagine redemption, imagine acceptance, imagine a life where she was more than the woman who had destroyed a marriage and broken up a fairy tale. Then in 2005, everything changed dramatically. Prince Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles married in a civil ceremony at the Windsor Guildhall. It wasn't the grand ceremony that Charles had enjoyed with Diana, nor was it conducted according to the strictest protocols of the Church of England. It was, by royal standards, a relatively modest affair. Yet it was revolutionary in its own way. After years of being the woman on the outside, the source of scandal and gossip, Camilla had finally achieved legitimacy in the eyes of the institution. She was no longer the other woman. She was no longer skulking in the shadows. She was a wife, and eventually, through patience, time, and the gracious acceptance of the British public, she would become a queen. Ray Mill House had served its purpose as the place where she could be herself before the world was ready to accept who she was. When Camilla married Charles in 2005, she was no longer living at Ray Mill House full-time. She had moved into Clarence House in London with the prince, trading the quiet countryside for the heart of royal power and presence. Yet she did not abandon her beloved Wiltshire property. Instead, she retained it as a country base, a place to retreat to when she needed solitude or when the demands of her new life as the wife of the heir to the throne became overwhelming. Ray Mill House transformed from her primary residence into her refuge, the place where she could go to remember who she was before the titles and the protocols and the weight of expectation. It was her place of restoration, her spiritual home, the place that belonged entirely to her, even as she took on new roles and new identities. The property's significance grew considerably when Camilla's daughter, Laura, married Harry Lopes in 2006. The couple chose Ray Mill House as the venue for their wedding reception, transforming those gardens and those rooms into the backdrop for one of the family's most important celebrations. This decision was deeply meaningful, as it signified that Ray Mill House was not just Camilla's retreat, but a cherished family property, a repository of family history and memory. The gardens that Camilla had so carefully cultivated were now hosting celebrations of family unity and love. The house that had been her refuge had become a space where joy was shared and new chapters were beginning. In September 2022, following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, the world's attention turned to the new king and his new queen consort. After a week of national mourning, after state ceremonies and royal protocols and the endless cycle of grief and transition, King Charles departed London by helicopter to Highgrove, his country estate in Gloucestershire. But Camilla did something different. She returned to Ray Mill House. She sought solace in the place where she had learned to be herself, where she had rebuilt her life in the aftermath of divorce, where she had spent so many quiet hours in her beloved gardens. The choice spoke volumes about what this property meant to her, about how deeply rooted she is in this place, about how it remains her true home even as she occupies palaces and castles and official residences across the realm. In 2024 and 2025, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, accompanied Camilla to Ray Mill House to capture birthday portraits. The photographs were stunning, showing a relaxed and genuinely happy woman surrounded by the gardens that she has cultivated for nearly 3 decades. For Camilla's 78th birthday, Catherine photographed her at Ray Mill House, creating images that would be released to the media and shared with the world. The Queen was pictured happy and relaxed at home, a remarkable statement for a woman who was once the subject of international scandal and condemnation. The garden of Ray Mill House, with its intimacy and idiosyncrasy, provided the perfect backdrop for these portraits. The photographer noted that Her Majesty was visibly relaxed, comfortable in her own skin, fully herself in a way that royal protocol often does not allow. These images showed the world a version of Camilla that few had ever seen before, a woman at home in both the literal and metaphorical sense. The Queen's love of gardening at Ray Mill House cannot be overstated or minimized. It is central to her identity and central to her well-being and mental health. When asked about growing vegetables at the property in 2025, she spoke with genuine enthusiasm and pride. Yes, she said, she does enjoy it. She is very proud of her vegetables. It is the best therapy in the world. She went on to complain about the lack of rain in recent months and joked about how much watering she had been doing. She described never having done so much watering in her life. This casual conversation revealed a woman who is deeply engaged in the daily, practical aspects of maintaining a garden and a home. She's not someone who merely owns property and allows others to manage it. She is someone who gets her hands dirty, who understands the satisfaction of growing food from seeds and soil. She is someone who knows intimately every corner of her property and every plant that grows there. Yet Ray Mill House has not always been a peaceful retreat free from complications and challenges. In December 2024, Camilla spoke with the Military Wives Choir about the impact of Stormbird on the property and the surrounding area. Her area, she explained, had been severely impacted by adverse weather and flooding. She had experienced flooding that was quite dramatic and quite unprecedented in her experience. Where her house is, she said, was completely underwater. You have never seen anything like it. It was like a seaside, she continued, describing how the water had risen so high that you could not see anything except for a lot of birds sailing about on the water. This conversation revealed not only the property's vulnerability to climate and weather events, but also Camilla's willingness to speak candidly about the challenges of owning and maintaining a country home. She did not shy away from discussing the difficulties. She spoke of them with humor and acceptance, as one speaks of the inevitable challenges of life in the countryside. In early 2025, King Charles made a significant and strategic investment in the area surrounding Ray Mill House. He purchased the old mill estate next to his wife's private home for £3 million, using private royal funds rather than public money. The monarch's decision was made deliberately to prevent the property from being converted into a wedding venue, which would have compromised Camilla's privacy and the peaceful enjoyment of her beloved home. The new arrangement involved installing security-vetted tenants who would ensure the property was put to appropriate use and would not become a source of noise or disturbance. A royal source explained the decision as a pragmatic solution that was both a sound financial investment and a way of maintaining Her Majesty's privacy, protection, and continued enjoyment of her much-loved home without any public funds being used. This was a major decision, a significant expenditure made purely for the protection of Camilla's sanctuary. This investment by King Charles reveals something profound about his relationship with his wife and her attachment to Ray Mill House. Despite living together as husband and wife, despite the passage of decades together, despite all they have shared and endured together, Charles recognized that Camilla's need for privacy and autonomy at this property was important enough to warrant a £3 million investment. The purchase of the neighboring property created a buffer zone around Ray Mill House, ensuring that Camilla could continue to enjoy her sanctuary without the encroachment of commercial development or the influx of wedding guests that would have accompanied the conversion of the old mill into a venue. It was a romantic gesture in the truest sense, an act of devotion clothed in financial and strategic terms, a declaration that her well-being and her happiness mattered more than the money required to protect them. The property's location within a conservation area has imposed certain constraints on what can and cannot be done with the land and buildings. In 2026, when Camilla applied for permission to cut down a cypress tree on the grounds, she was required to seek approval from her local authorities. The tree, described as having a substantial trunk, was deteriorating and blocking light from younger plants on the grounds. Because Ray Mill sits within a conservation area, the Queen had to obtain council consent before proceeding with any work. Lecoq Parish Council considered the application and resolved to submit a representation of no objection to Wiltshire Council's planning team. The parish clerk confirmed the decision, noting that the council had reviewed the proposed tree works at Ray Mill House and had determined that there was no objection to the proposal. The final decision would rest with Wiltshire Council, but the parish council's support suggested that the application would likely be approved. This small detail about the cypress tree application reveals the complexity of owning a historic property in a conservation area. It also speaks to Camilla's conscientiousness as a property owner. Rather than simply doing as she wished on her own land, she engaged with the proper procedures and sought approval from local authorities. This is not the behavior of someone who views property ownership as an excuse to do whatever one desires. Instead, it reflects respect for local governance and a recognition of the broader community's interest in preserving the character and integrity of the area. It shows a woman who understands that even queens must work within the system and respect the institutions that govern us all. Then, in February and March of 2026, a remarkable development occurred that would transform the entire story of Ray Mill House and place it in a new context. Through land registry documents that were made public and reported in the media, it was revealed that Camilla had discreetly transferred ownership of her beloved property. The newly registered owners were listed as Harry Lopes, her son-in-law, and Jake Irwin, a financier. However, the transfer was more complex than a simple change of ownership might suggest. Lopes and Irwin held the legal title for land registry purposes, but they were not the beneficial owners. As trustees, they held the property on behalf of the real beneficial owners, who were Camilla's daughter, Laura Lopes, and her son, Tom Parker Bowles. The property had moved from being Camilla's personal possession into a family trust structure that ensured its preservation and continuity for future generations. This transfer was significant for several important reasons. First, it represented a formalization of what had perhaps always been inevitable, that Ray Mill House, after decades of Camilla's personal stewardship, would eventually pass to her children. Second, it suggested that Camilla, now in her late 70s and enjoying her position as queen consort, was thinking about succession and the future. The property held considerable value for her children, not just in monetary terms, but in emotional and familial terms. Laura's wedding reception had been held in those gardens. Tom and Laura had grown up with Ray Millhouse as a family property. To ensure that the property remained in the family's hands and was not sold off or divided among distant relatives, Camilla had taken steps to secure its future through legal mechanisms that would protect it for generations to come. The timing of the transfer was also significant and strategic. It occurred while the media's attention was focused elsewhere, while the nation was processing other royal developments and scandals and news. It was, by design, a quiet transaction, handled through proper legal channels and executed with minimal fanfare and without ceremony. The Daily Mail's Eden Confidential column broke the story, but it did not create the kind of media sensation that royal news often generates. Instead, it was treated as a matter of fact, a pragmatic decision by a woman putting her affairs in order and ensuring that her legacy, in the form of Ray Millhouse, would benefit her children and grandchildren for generations to come. The decision to transfer Ray Millhouse to her children represents a moment of profound generosity and foresight. Camilla could have maintained ownership of the property until her death, allowing it to pass to her heirs through her will. Instead, she chose to give it to them while she was still alive, while she could still witness their stewardship of it, and while she could still enjoy it alongside them. This is the behavior of someone who has transcended ego and attachment, who values the family more than the individual claim to ownership. It speaks to a woman who has learned through decades of struggle and challenge that the things that matter most are not the things we possess, but the people we love and the memories we create with them. Yet importantly, the transfer did not mean that Camilla abandoned her connection to Ray Millhouse. She continues to spend time there, continues to work in the gardens, continues to use it as her refuge and sanctuary. The beneficial ownership was transferred to Laura and Tom, but the property remains as much a part of Camilla's life as it ever was. She simply ensured that when the time came for her to pass from this world, her beloved home would not be sold off or divided among distant relatives. Instead, it would remain in the hands of those she loved most. What makes Ray Millhouse so extraordinary in the context of modern royal life is precisely what makes it different from all other royal properties. This is not a palace designed to awe and intimidate. This is not a state residence maintained for official ceremonies and diplomatic functions. This is not a hunting lodge or a seaside retreat reserved for holidays. Instead, Ray Millhouse is something far more precious and far more rare. It is a genuine home where genuine life is lived. It is a place where the masks come off and the pretense falls away. It is a space where a woman can be herself without the burden of being watched or judged or scrutinized. In an age when privacy is increasingly elusive and personal space is constantly invaded, Ray Millhouse represents a sanctuary of genuine autonomy. The property also represents something significant about the evolution of the British monarchy itself. For centuries, the institution has been about duty, obligation, protocol, and the subordination of personal desires to the needs of the crown and the nation. The image of a monarch was one of austere perfection, of someone who sacrificed everything for the throne. But Ray Millhouse speaks to a different kind of monarchy, one where the person matters, where the individual's well-being and happiness are recognized as important components of being able to serve. It acknowledges that even queens are human, that they have needs and desires, and the right to privacy. Camilla's ownership of Ray Millhouse, and now her passing of it to her children, represents a quiet revolution in how we think about royal life and royal duty. The investment that King Charles made in purchasing the neighboring Old Mill property is particularly revealing. It demonstrates that he, too, understands the importance of his wife's need for personal space and privacy. Rather than viewing Ray Millhouse as a symbol of Camilla's life before she became royalty, he sees it as an integral part of who she is and what sustains her. His decision to protect it by purchasing the surrounding property shows respect for her identity and her autonomy. It is a statement that even as she fulfills her royal duties and obligations, her personal sanctuary remains hers to control and enjoy. This is a model of partnership that challenges traditional notions of what it means to be married to royalty. The gardens at Ray Millhouse also tell an important story about female agency and creative expression. For centuries, the gardens of great estates were designed and maintained by men, often professional gardeners, hired to create specific effects for an audience. But Camilla's gardens are different. They are the work of a woman, engaged in an ongoing creative process. A woman who is not creating for an audience, but for herself. The gardens evolve with her, reflect her changing interests and moods, and represent her direct engagement with the natural world. This is not horticulture as a visual spectacle. This is horticulture as therapy, as meditation, as a way of staying connected to what is real and true and growing in the literal sense. The story of Ray Millhouse also speaks to the universality of the desire for home and sanctuary. While most people will never own an 850,000-pound estate or live in a 12-acre property with stables and swimming pools, the basic human need that drove Camilla to purchase Ray Millhouse is something that resonates across all levels of society. Everyone wants a place they can call their own, where they are fully themselves, where they are not performing or pretending or living up to expectations. Everyone wants to feel the earth beneath their hands and know the satisfaction of growing something beautiful. Everyone wants a home that is truly and authentically theirs. Camilla's story at Ray Mill House is ultimately a universal story, even though the specifics of her circumstances are extraordinarily privileged. The story of Ray Mill House is ultimately a story about transformation and resilience and the human capacity for growth. It is a story about a woman who faced devastating personal circumstances and chose to build something beautiful in response. When her marriage ended, when she faced social censure and public condemnation, when she was cast as the villain in one of the greatest royal dramas of the modern age, she purchased a home in the Wiltshire countryside and created a space where she could be authentically herself. She filled those 12 acres with gardens and beauty and life. She welcomed her children and grandchildren into the space. She built a sanctuary that represented everything she valued: beauty, nature, family, and the pursuit of a life lived on her own terms. For decades, Ray Mill House remained relatively unknown to the general public. While Highgrove and Clarence House occupied the pages of architectural magazines and royal documentaries, Ray Mill House remained private and protected, known only to those close to Camilla. But in recent years, through the photographs released by the Princess of Wales and the increasing interest in Camilla's life and character, the property has become more widely known and appreciated. People have come to understand that beneath the titles and the protocols, Camilla Parker Bowles is a woman who gardens, who loves nature, who values beauty and quietude above all else. She is a woman who has learned that the most important things in life are not crowns or palaces or public recognition, but rather the ability to tend a garden with one's own hands and to share a home with those one loves. The irony that opened this story remains as potent as ever. While the world was captivated by the fairy tale of Charles and Diana, and then devastated by its tragic conclusion, Camilla was quietly living a life that many might envy. She was not caught in the whirlwind of royal drama. She was not performing for cameras or living according to the expectations of the nation. She was, instead, in her gardens at Ray Mill House, working the soil, planting flowers, watching things grow. When everything came crashing down and she was finally able to step out of the shadows and take her place as a public figure and then as queen consort, she did not abandon the lessons she had learned or the sanctuary she had built. She carried them with her, integrated them into her new life, and eventually passed them on to her children. Ray Mill House stands as a testament to Camilla's character and values and priorities. It is not the grandest of properties, nor is it the most expensive. But it is deeply, profoundly hers. Every corner of the house and every area of the garden reflects years of careful attention and personal engagement. The cypress tree that required permission to remove, the vegetables that she tends with, H-Pride, the tiger sculpture that appears in every garden she has owned, the 12 acres that have witnessed decades of a woman becoming who she was always meant to be. These things together form a portrait of a life fully lived, of a woman who refused to be defined by scandal or circumstance, of someone who claimed her own story and wrote her own ending. Ray Mill House has become something of an open secret within royal circles. Everyone knows it belongs to Camilla, but there is an unspoken agreement that it remains off limits for scrutiny and intrusion. Photographs released by the palace are carefully curated and released only on significant occasions. The property is not available for public visits. The gates remain closed and boundaries maintained. This respect for privacy is one of the most telling indicators of how Camilla's position has evolved. No longer the despised outsider, she has become someone whose privacy is respected and protected. Ray Mill House exists in a kind of blessed isolation, protected by both law and custom, allowed to remain exactly what it is. The financial aspects of Camilla's ownership and eventual transfer of Ray Mill House also deserve consideration. The $850,000 she paid in 1996 was a significant sum, representing either her own resources or a loan she was willing to take on independently. This suggests a woman of considerable financial means and independence. The fact that she maintained ownership for 30 years, never selling even during moments when money might have been tight or other opportunities attractive, demonstrates the property's irreplaceable value in her life. It was never an investment to be liquidated or a property to be traded up. It was always and only a home, a personal anchor, something kept close and protected. The transfer to her children in trust, rather than a direct ownership, shows sophisticated estate planning and a desire to protect the property in perpetuity. By placing it in trust with her daughter and son as the beneficial owners, Camilla has ensured that it cannot be easily seized or sold by creditors, cannot be divided in the case of divorce, and will remain in the family hands for generations. This is the kind of decision made by someone who thinks in terms of legacy and family continuity. It shows a woman who is not just living in the moment, but thinking about the future and about what she wants to leave behind for those she loves most. As we look at Ray Mill House today, we see a property that has transformed from a divorce haven into a family treasure, from Camilla's personal sanctuary into a place that she has graciously shared with her children and grandchildren, and eventually passed into their stewardship. The $850,000 investment that she made back in 1996 has proven to be far more than a financial decision. It was an investment in her own well-being, in her future, and the possibility of building a life on her own terms in the face of tremendous pressure and social judgment. And in the end, Ray Milhouse reveals the truth about Queen Camilla that decades of speculation and scandal could not touch. She is a woman who knows what matters, who values substance over show, and who has built a life of genuine meaning and authentic happiness in the rolling hills of Wiltshire. This is her story, and Ray Milhouse is its heart.